Welcome to AWS Elastic Beanstalk with Flask for continuous delivery in 1 hour. My name is Noah Gift, and I'm going to guide you through how to use Elastic Beanstalk, Python, and Flask and get something going really quickly, and also to use a DevOps best principle, which is continuous delivery. We'll also go through and create a lint process so you can check your code, and all will be done using native AWS technology. This is a pretty exciting demo and can't wait to get started. In this demo, we're going to get into doing continuous delivery with Flask and also AWS and AWS Code Build. So the pipeline first starts with having some kind of a instance that communicates with Cloud 9 here. And GitHub will be where I store the source code, and this could have, let's say, a make file inside, which we'll use to lint our code and to test our code. It'll have a requirements file, and this file will allow us to declare the packages. And then in the Cloud 9 environment, this is where I would have a feedback loop and develop the application. Once I've got this set up, then the next step would be to test out a deploy locally here to an AWS Elastic Beanstalk service. And this is a PaaS, or a platform as a service offering. What this means is I don't have to do anything. It'll automatically deploy to this environment, and I don't have to manage the servers. I can SSH in fact, that's something that we'll do. But later, once I've got this set up, finally, I want to set up continuous delivery. How do I do this? Well, what I'll do is I'll have GitHub here, and this GitHub environment will integrate with AWS Code Build. And every time there's a change event, it'll push new changes into this Code Build environment, which will then in turn deploy to Beanstalk. So in a nutshell, this is a full continuous delivery pipeline here. So we'll call this CD. And this CD pipeline will allow us to employ DevOps best practices and make changes just by modifying our source code. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with a Flask Elastic Beanstalk continuous deployment application. You can see here the main components are there's an Elastic Beanstalk hidden directory that has a config file. And this information has things like the SSH keys, the version of Python, the name of the application. There's also going to be inside of here a makefile that we'll get into, which will allow us to quickly install software, do a lint to protect our application from extraneous errors, and then also we'll do a deploy that will deploy it into the Elastic Beanstalk environment, and also allow us to make sure that we have a very simple process of doing a deployment. And then this actual application file here is pretty straightforward. It's almost like a hello world, that it has a route that has a message inside, and then also there's an echo that echoes out something that somebody puts in. So it's a good kind of test application here. And then later we'll get into setting up a build file that will allow us to automatically deploy these changes, step by step. In fact, what we're going to do now is, before I even build this out, is again walk through this overview here. Is I've got the Cloud 9 environment, I've got GitHub, I've got Elastic Beanstalk, and I have Code Build. These are the main components. So let's first look at what we're building, and then we'll build it. So Elastic Beanstalk here, notice that there's an application called Hello right here. And this has all the information about the actual application. If I go down here, I can look at the configuration. I can look at the log files. If I wanted to, I could look at the last bits of log files, and it'll preview out what's happening. This is a great way to debug the application, and I would just download those files. I can look at the health, so what's happening, how many instances are up, what's the status. I can look at monitoring. So there's a lot of high-level tools here that you get by using this platform as a service offering. Now let's go ahead and test out this particular application and see how we can leverage the power of continuous delivery. So I have this Code Build environment set up right here, and in particular it says continuous delivery Elastic Beanstalk. And it's set up to this repo, this Noah Gift Flask Elastic Beanstalk repo. And if you notice here that it's actually set up to run every single time I have a commit. So I can actually really easily test this out by going back to this file, going to the application and just changing this. So we can say, for example, we'll call this continuous delivery demo, just like that. And if I go ahead and I save it, this will trigger the Elastic Beanstalk build. So let's go ahead and do that. There we go. If I refresh, we see that it's automatically triggered. So this is really the beauty of doing continuous delivery, is that you can make a change in source code either in a development environment or even from GitHub itself. It'll instantly hit the build server. It'll go through continuous integration to make sure that there's no bugs. It'll make sure that the code is high quality, and then it'll initiate the deployment. So we can watch this. This will take approximately a minute or so, and then it will deploy our application. Okay, so now this application is running here. You can see that it's doing the installation. If I scroll up here, in fact, I can look at my build process command. Those will appear right here. So running command make install. Once the installation's done, the next step up will be the lint. So it'll check for syntax errors. If I was doing this in a real world environment, I would also have some logic tests, right? So maybe PyTest built in there. That looks like it worked. And then it runs this command called hello environment. Great. So now it's going to go through and it's going to deploy the application using the Elastic Beanstalk command line tool. So again, this is almost done. It should take a second, and then we'll have our Elastic Beanstalk application ready to go. There we go. It's in finalizing phase. Perfect. So it's been complete. Now, if I go back here and I go to my Elastic Beanstalk environment, let's go ahead and pull that up here. I can look at the actual server, which is this one, hello environment, and I can click on this URL, and there we go, continuous delivery demo. So we've got a full round trip working the whole continuous delivery with Elastic Beanstalk, and AWS code build is there. So next up here, let's actually do this from scratch. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to AWS Cloud 9, and I'm going to create a new environment from scratch. So I'm going to say create environment, and we'll call this Flask continuous delivery. There we go. And I'll leave everything default here, which is a new instance will be created. I'll use a micro, which is plenty of power. I'll have Amazon Linux 2. That's great. That's exactly the environment I want to be in. I'll go ahead and create this. All right, so we're all set up and we're ready to go here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create SSH keys. So type in SSH keygen -t RSA. I only have to do this the very first time I create a new environment. There's a new environment, so I'm going to do this. There we go. And I'm going to cat those files here so that what this will do is basically give me the public key file so that I can put this into GitHub and I can do encrypted communication between GitHub and this environment. So I'm going to go to my settings, go to SSH and GPG keys, make one real quick here, and say EB, we'll call this demo. There we go. Save this, ready to go. Okay, so we got that set up. Next step, I'm going to go back to this repo and I'm going to make a copy of it so I can tweak it. This is what I would recommend is if you're following along with this demo, do a fork of this repo. So I'm going to click on fork. There we go. I'm going to pick some new environments. This would be obviously your environment. And then once this fork has been created, I'm going to click on code here and copy this. Great. So I've got this thing set up here. And now I can actually go here and do a git clone. There we go. Perfect. So this thing's now set up here. And because we're in this Cloud 9 environment, I have a lot of power here to really quickly make changes. So I'm going to go through here and follow this tutorial. We see it says fork the repo, which I just did. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a virtual environment. I typically do this on Python projects because it solves a lot of problems in terms of reliability. I have an isolated environment to work in, so We'll go ahead and do that. This will take just a second. Okay, great. Now I'm going to go through here and I'm going to source this file. And you can see now if I type in which EB, there's no EB, so I need to install that tool. And so how do I do that? Well, I'm going to go to this makefile and notice it's got an installation command here. So what's great about this is that all I need to do is run that make install and it'll put all these packages inside of here. So I'm going to again go ahead and do that. So I'm going to run make all, which will both install the software and it will lint the software. So first I got to change into this directory, which is going to be Flask Elastic Beanstalk, and I can type in make all. There we go. So it'll install the software. Once it's done installing, it'll lint, so it'll check to make sure my project is of appropriate quality, and then we know that we're ready to go. All right, so we're ready to go here. Now, one thing I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to delete this Elastic Beanstalk file. So I'm going to type in git rm Elastic Beanstalk here, and this will rm-r, and this will actually allow me to recreate the proper name here because I don't want to use the same name. And then the next thing that I'll do is I will run this command here. It's some variant of this, and if you're following along at home, you want to slightly tweak this. So basically, I'm going to say ebinit -p Python 3.7, and then I can just call this whatever I want. I could leave this name Flask continuous delivery. In this case, I'll just say Flask demo, and there we go. I say -- region US East 1. This would just mean the geographic region that I wanted to deploy this to. So let's go ahead and do that. This will now create this initial structure. Perfect. And once I've created this initial structure, the next thing that will happen is that I will be able to also allow the init operation to occur, which will allow me to also connect and create SSH keys. So I'm going to go ahead and do that next. There we go. So now you see a new Elastic Beanstalk file has been created that has basically the configuration for our application. Now I'll type in ebinit again, and this will go through here and create SSH keys for us, which is pretty handy because it allows me to shell into the machine and double check if something's going on, or I want to maybe see how something's working. This is an optional, kind of nice to have feature. There we go. Do I want to continue with code commit? No, I don't want to put this into code commit. I'm going to use instead SSH, yes. And then I'm going to create a new key pair. So we'll go ahead and say 8. And for a new key pair, I'll call this AWS EB demo. There we go. Perfect. And this just puts that key locally in my environment. So we're all set up and we're ready to do the remote deploy. And so what this will do, if I run this next command, is it'll create an environment for us. So I'm going to type in eb create flask. And since I've created previously a demo, I'll just do the same thing. I'll just say flask demo environment. So this will be the actual physical machines. This will take a few minutes. Now that this is going through and creating all of the key characteristics of the Elastic Beanstalk environment, including putting the application files inside of S3, creating a security group, creating a load balancer, creating an auto scale group, we can go back now to the Elastic Beanstalk environment, and we should see another application there. So if I go to environments, there we go, Flask demo environment. You can see that it's pending, and the application, which is this Flask demo, it's also kind of waiting here for things to go. So it's in the process of being set up, and you can go back again here and watch it, and piece by piece, these things will actually be set up. All right, so this is successfully launched. So we can go back to Elastic Beanstalk and we can refresh here. There we go. And if we go click on the URL, There we go, continuous delivery demo, things are all set. So the next thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to set up the rest of the project, which is this code build aspect of the project. So how do I do this? Well, the next thing that I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to slightly tweak here the makefile so that it remembers the right name. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to go to the makefile and put in the right name here. This is it, like that. Great. And then if we look at this build spec file, you can see everything that it does. So all it does is it has a Python environment. The first step is I create a virtual environment. The second step is I activate it. I then do a make install. I do a make lint so I can test that my application is valid. Then if that passes, and there's no guarantee it will, if it's bad code, it'll break and it won't do the deploy, then it'll go to this final stage here. So we're all set. All I need to do is do a Git Status and see what's different. So I changed, for example, the Elastic Beanstalk files, and I changed the make file. So let's go ahead and change that. And in fact, let's actually change the application as well to make it a little bit different. Let's say continuous delivery demo, and we'll put with AWS code build. Right, so we can test out that code build is going to do this. So we'll say git add makefile right here, and then I'll say git add Elastic Beanstalk, add this directory. We'll do git commit. Let's see, here we go, git commit -m adding code build. Perfect, and then we'll do a push. All right, so all those changes are pushed there. We can just double check even those changes, refresh this. Always a good idea when you're testing deployment. It looks like, in fact, we did make those changes. And now all I need to do is go to code build and set this up. So I'm gonna go back here to build projects, say create build project. And I'm gonna call this as well, Flask demo build, great. And then a couple things that we can take a look at here is, do we need tags? No, we don't. What about the source code? I'm going to use GitHub. If you require a lot of security, probably using everything inside of AWS is better. And then also the rebuild every time a code change is pushed to the repository. So this is a critical one so that it'll make the change every time that you make the change to GitHub. And finally, another thing to be aware of here is the managed image here. So I would go through here and use the same environment that I was using before. So standard, Amazon Linux. And this is the great thing about developing with the AWS Cloud 9 environment. And then from here, the other thing is I would make sure that there's a role that had the privileges to do those changes. So you could either create a new role yourself that had the ability to push changes to it, or in my case, I had one before where I had some an admin set up that can do changes. And then finally, I will need to say, do I want to use a build spec file here, just like this? And then once this is all set up, pretty much we're ready to go. Again, it'll look at that build spec file here, and then I just say create build project. And then every time I make a change, it'll go through and trigger those modifications. So in a nutshell, that's Elastic Beanstalk. You can go through here and do this yourself by forking this repository, and you can get this continuous delivery pipeline set up that uses platform as a service on AWS. Congratulations, you were able to finish this video. Now, if you're still going through some of the tutorial, keep in mind it'll be about an hour total to do this video. I sped up a bunch of things and edited out the pieces that were boring, but it takes a little bit of time to spin up environments and wait for things to run. But this is an important skill, doing continuous delivery, and whether you do it on the AWS platform or the Google platform or the Microsoft platform, really the concept is the same. Is you have a repository, you have a cloud-based environment, you build a microservice like a Flask Python microservice, you set up linting, you automatically trigger the deployment, and then you've got a complete continuous delivery pipeline. So this is a modern best practice, and it's something that I think everybody should have that's a modern software engineer or a machine learning engineer or even a data scientist.